Do you know how rare it is for someone who owns a highly modified car to say they feel fulfilled? Like, you are a rare person. Why does this Lexus sedan feel like the springs are just made of a single brick? You know how many sensors I've replaced in my car? In the early 2000s, Lexus wanted to go after the competition from Germany when it came to sports sedans and coupes. The Japanese company had never really had a contender. The GS 430 was quick, but a little bit too heavy and soft to really go after the M3. And the IS 300, as much as I love them, was just too slow. It was making mid-90s horsepower in the early 2000s. It was time for a rethink. So in 2007, Lexus unveiled the ISF at the North American Auto Show. It was built on a shortened GS platform. The lead engineer liked to do rallying in his spare time, and it was going to have a V8. Sounds amazing. A company known for reliability is going to enter the sports sedan market and go after the companies that were known for other things. But when the car debuted, Lexus had problems. The steering was numb, but worse than that was the ride. Lexus set the car up really low, which looked really good, but it meant the suspension didn't have a lot of travel. So they had to make it really stiff so that the car didn't hit the bump stops. As a result, the ride around town was very unrefined. However, in 2011, Lexus revised it, and they changed basically every suspension component this thing had. Springs, shocks, sway bars, lower control arms. They revised the steering. They revised the shock tuning, all to try to get away from that too stiff ride that the first gen was known for. And yet, it still wasn't great. It was still too stiff. It still had issues. But what if you put custom Öhlins on it? What if you got springs paired with those Öhlins perfectly? And then what if you also upgraded the brakes and bolted a supercharger to it, adding 150 to 200 horsepower? Maybe that would turn it into the M3 and C63 fighter we all wish the car had been.
Folks, today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. I am a big proponent of mental health, and if you're seeing your own therapist already, that's great. Keep doing that. I like my therapist, been seeing him for a long time. I'm going to keep doing that. But what if you have considered therapy, but you don't know where to start? Maybe you're in an area where therapy is not really a thing. Maybe after the pandemic, therapists aren't really taking new clients. Maybe you just don't know how to do it. BetterHelp is here to help you. It's like therapy, but it's even better because it works around your schedule, works within your budget. It's 100% online. All you have to do is go to betterhelp.com/smokingtire and fill out a basic questionnaire about your needs, your concerns. It could be like serious mental health issues, or it could be that you're just feeling off, like you're not reaching your potential, like you're down after a breakup or a job loss, like you think you might be depressed, but you don't really know if you are. You name it. Fill out the questionnaire, and within a couple of days, BetterHelp can match you with one of their thousands of licensed therapists. Then you can video chat, you can phone chat, you can text, you can message on your schedule. And because therapy is a little like dating, sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you have a couple sessions and you're not really vibing with the person. That's totally okay. More importantly, it's totally normal. That's why BetterHelp allows you to switch therapists for no additional charge. You don't have to worry about the insurance aspect of anything like that. Find a new therapist that you make a better connection with inside BetterHelp. It's a great system. It's accessible from anywhere, and you can make it work on your time, and it's more affordable than regular therapy too, especially if you use our code. You get a little bit of a discount. So if you're struggling, head over to betterhelp.com/smokingtire, and that link will get you 10% off your first month of therapy at BetterHelp. And thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video.
Steven.
Yes.
Welcome to the Canyons, my friend. Thank you for bringing up your amazing 2011 Lexus ISF. And as I set up in the video, this is not stock. No. Anyone who has eyes can look at this and tell that it's not stock. I mean, you have a cold air intake peeking out like down below in the front fascia where there's a grill removed. Obviously, there's a lot of carbon on it. So what is going on with this car? What have you done to it?
It's got a Stage 4 RR Racing supercharger kit, which is the most obvious modification. It completely changes the car. Being that it's a Stage 4, it's the highest level. It's running on full E85, so that once we did the pulley and the full E85, it gained 100 wheel horsepower.
Whoa.
So that's what brought us up to 652 horsepower.
So with this
wheels.
supercharger on pump gas, it was like 550 wheel, which is a lot.
Yep.
Okay, so and now full E85 all the time.
Full 85 and a smaller supercharger pulley and 652 wheel. It does have upgraded injectors as well. They're 550cc on the 8 indirect injectors. The 8 direct injectors are still stock.
Right, because this car incredibly has port injection and direct injection.
Correct, yes.
Which is usually a tuner's dream, because then you can
Yes.
kind of mess with one, and then you still have you have options basically.
Exactly.
What about brakes and suspension? It's obviously sitting low, people can tell, but what's been done?
Olin coilovers, and they're custom made by a company called Figs Engineering. So they're 18K in the front, 14 in the rear. They're fully adjustable. They came originally with the Olin springs, but they've been upgraded to custom Swift springs.
Okay.
And then as far as the braking, the fronts are stock. They're pretty big as they come, but the brakes have been upgraded, the pads, to the Project MU, the green stuff, which I'm also running in the rear. But in the rear, I have the 4-piston upgraded Wheelwood brake rotor calipers.
Is the stock rear rotor a two-piston rotor?
2-piston, sorry, yeah,
Okay.
2-piston rotor.
So now you got a 4 in the back.
A 4 in the
braking
back.
force in the back. Okay.
A lot more braking force, which is what this car needed. The Megan Racing toe links and the upper control arms are Godspeed.
So that's why I'm excited about this car, because you and the previous owner have put so much work and so many parts and attention into like everything about it. And I feel like this car always had so much potential, and it was such a bummer that when they came out, and then even when they revised them, they were still like imperfect, So what mode do you like to drive it in terms of the transmission? We got this 8-speed automatic, paddles and whatnot, but what do you like?
The best way to drive it, so you can feel the true power. In fact, I have it in manual mode.
Okay.
So manual, and then now you can see the gearing there. So now you're full mode for the paddles, or you can upshift or downshift with the knob.
With the stick, right?
Yeah.
Now, the lead engineer
mode.
of this car was a rally enthusiast, and yet it is a push for upshift, pull for downshift, which is the opposite of a rally car.
Correct.
So he probably couldn't get all of his wants across the line with the accountants. Whoa.
About 62 is the max.
Okay.
And by the time when you're full wide open throttle at 6,200 RPM, you'll actually redline around 7,000.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's that super. It's just because it's trying to keep up with the pulley, the supercharger.
Right.
So if you shift too late, the belt could fly off.
Okay.
But at least by 7,000 you've reached max, the peak.
All right.
Power.
I will shift conservatively.
And then sport mode will also give you a little extra feel. It changes the tone and the power of the transmission.
Does it change the electronic steering at all? Because this had,
yes.
This is one of the earlier cars with electronic power steering. They started in 08, which is really early, and then obviously they continued. So does the sport mode firm that up a bit, weight it up a bit?
Correct, it does. Yeah, when you put it in sport mode, it normally would have adjusted the suspension and the steering ECU as well. It gets a bit stiffer.
Mode. Okay.
And you can hear when you get in sport mode, the tone of the exhaust changes as well, and the transmission, it becomes a lot more grabbier.
So you still have like a 2-mode exhaust, even though you have an aftermarket exhaust, which is very loud. So does the muffler have like an electronic actuator valve that then opens it up fully?
No, that's solely off of the engine.
Okay.
So the engine itself, it goes into this much sportier mode, and it's the valving inside that changes. Even on the downshifts, you can hear it.
Well, I'm going to be careful with your baby.
Sure.
I know you've only had this car a year, but you've been in the ISF community for a long time. You had an 08 before this, right?
Correct, yeah. I started with an 08. It was stock. I did some basic modifications, wanted more, and I had the opportunity to get this one, and it was a dream come true, and I feel like now I feel like fulfilled. I really truly enjoy the power, and it's very stable. I feel confident in the car with the suspension, and it's basically everything that's been done to it.
Do you know how rare it is for someone who owns a highly modified car to say they feel fulfilled? Like, you are a rare person. I can't tell you, and I'm so excited for you. It's so great that you built something so powerful or drive something so powerful, and you're like, yeah, and this is good, and it ticks the box, and you're not trying to add 100 or 150 more or whatever.
You know, if I had the, well, another thing too, I feel like I might be at my max as far as reliability and the way I drive, the way I want to drive it. I feel like I might be already maxed out. Anything further is just more riskier, and because of the fact that I do drive it, it's not a daily driver, but I drive it often enough to where it's not on a trailer.
That's a great point. Let's talk about reliability. I mean, Lexus, Toyota, like that is one of their tent poles. You know, it's one of their pillars. It's like their reputation is literally built upon being reliable. And when this car came out, I mean, I was really excited about it because it is the reliable, exciting option compared to BMW and Mercedes. And I know when the cars are new, they all kind of work pretty well, but as I know and many of our viewers know, that owning a used German car is a different experience than owning a used Japanese car, for the most part, with some exceptions. So how has this been in terms of reliability? How long has this supercharger been on here, and how's it been to own?
The supercharger's been on about 7 years, and it's been pretty reliable. Just basic maintenance. It does have a filter, requires oil change every 2 years or 50,000 miles, but it's been reliable. No issues with it.
I love that. You're like, well, it does require oil changes. Like, man, you know how many sensors I've replaced in my car?
The one thing, though, it's very, very sensitive to oil levels.
Okay.
Too much can damage it. It can blow it, or it'll it'll leak everywhere with the pressure. So it's almost like one of those things where it's even though it's a basic thing, the user manual does stress to be very on top of the fluid.
It's got to be precise.
It's got to be precise, and it's actually not very easy to check it. It's got to be done by 2 people.
Oh.
It's got to be done while revving the engine.
Oh, wow.
So you basically, you really can't do it by yourself because you have to, they say the best way to do it is to actually be revving while checking. So I always try to get my wife or a friend to give me a hand with that.
Well, speaking of revving, this feels incredible. This feels so incredible.
I'm glad you like it.
So what I love about superchargers, and I've said it before, is it just takes like the car's inherent power band and feel and just turns it all up a notch. It like moves everything up one level. It's almost like if you live in an apartment on a 2nd story and they were able to just take your entire apartment and lift it up to the 12th story without you having to move all of your things. Nothing changes. You just now have a higher view. That's what I love about them, because it still feels like the amazing NA V8. It's just way faster.
Correct, yeah. And I forget sometimes. On top of it, the engine was built by Toyota
with Yamaha's F1 engine team.
So that is even an additional benefit to these cars, that it's a race bred car that's super solid and reliable because Yamaha stepped into the already reliable Toyota company that would have an awesome engine.
Yeah, this engine came with forged internals. Yamaha's F1 engine team worked on it. It had an all-new head design compared to the LS600 it was sort of based on. It was like, this was their shot.
It was a game changer.
Yeah.
And I believe it was their first real supercar level type of car.
So I shifted at 64, and then there's a little bit of but it's not that. It's just the way the transmission shifts. And
Because
it
of the torque
it
converter,
over revs slightly.
Yes, correct.
Let's go 3. What a sound.
Puts a smile on my face.
What a sound. Oh my
every
God.
time.
And then the transmission programming is, if we're on the brakes, it downshifts pretty quick.
Yeah,
It's got it blips
yeah.
really well. I mean, it's not like a dual clutch, but this transmission was developed in 2008, and it's not a dual clutch like the M3 had. It's a regular automatic.
Correct, which I couldn't believe it after. I thought it was a dual clutch because it's so responsive, and I have no complaints with that. I feel like it's ahead of its time.
Pretty quick. Now let's talk about the handling, because you've done a lot of work. There's a lot of suspension parts on this car. I have to say, this is pretty much how I want a car to ride on this road. It might be just slightly too stiff, but this is a really strange road. But the fact that the last ISF I drove was a bone stock one in like 2012, 2013. And even when I was in my 20s and I thought, like I had different ideas of what made a good car in terms of suspension setup, like more aggressive is better. That car was too stiff. I just remember driving it on the highway and in the canyons, and I was like, why does this Lexus sedan feel like the springs are just made of a single brick? I don't understand what was going on. And it was a common complaint with the 08s. They revised everything, but it was still not as good as the E90, E92s. And then, it just wasn't as kind of compliant and like accurate as those cars. So
Right.
with this, I feel like you've done it right. I mean, it's soft enough that we're not shuddering over everything, but it's not so soft where I feel like we're leaning over a ton in the corners.
Right, and that's just with all the even the suspension and even the 11 upgrade in the suspension was much better with this, with the corner balancing and everything else we've done. We really got it. I feel like we really dialed down the handling where it almost doesn't feel like an ISF anymore.
It feels really good, man. I mean, right
Super
now there's
planted
just
and solid.
very planted. It feels
and I haven't
really
even
locked
installed
in.
the sway bars yet, so that'll be another additional.
I mean, I gotta say, like it leans over for me just the perfect amount. I can tell how much G-force is leaning on the tire right now, and it doesn't feel like it's so flat that if we lose grip, it'll skitter away. Like if it has too much bar in it, it's just really nice. It soaks everything up, but I just feel really attached to the road. And then the steering it's heavy. It's like I don't get a ton of feedback from the front tire, but I get enough. For 2011 electronic steering, I will take it. I will absolutely take it.
I forget it's a 12-year-old car.
I would say I think this is even with like a modern 340i or an M340i in terms of steering feel. I mean, that steering system is not known for being great, but I'm just saying that's 10 years later, and this feels as good. Dude. It smells like E85 in here. This thing is a rocket ship.
It's literally intoxicating.
Oh, you get addicted to this. This thing just flows in the corners, dude. It really does. And I can absolutely feel what the back of the car is doing. I love it.
It's very predictable.
It's really predictable.
And after a few good turns, that's when you realize like this thing's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, now I can push it. See, I can see that you're like, I'm not gonna go anywhere. I'm just gonna go a little faster.
Yep. Exactly. I feel really comfortable in this car, and that is so great.
The goal is to have it be the one car that can do it all. So it's a 10-second car. It can get up to about 200 miles an hour, which this December we'll find out just because I'm doing the sector mile. So I'm going to try to hit 200. And then it's a 10-second car. It does road courses. It does canyons. I would like to eventually learn how to drift in it once I get the e-brake.
It'll definitely do that.
So, yeah. And now with the LSD, I'm confident that it's just a matter of getting my e-brake brake adjusted, get the parts custom made.
Right. I mean, when they first sold this car, it was sold with an open diff, which seems ridiculous. But
Right.
keep in mind, so did Mercedes. The C63 was open diff, unless you ordered a special package or eventually got like the 507 edition, which is, it's so funny to me that, you know, well, all the companies went, here's all the torque, V8 horsepower, open differential. God, it just sounds angry, and it's fast, and it's really comfortable. I mean, these seats are amazing. These cars have got to be, like, if you don't really need the manual transmission or the fastest shifting thing in the world, like for anyone who's, I think, shopping for an M3 or a C63, like, I would rather have this transmission than the one in the C63. The C63 has more torque. It's a really fun engine, but this is also a great engine. And, you know, a lot of people have talked in the forums about the reliability of these things. It's hard to argue with it. And the seats are super comfortable. I think the gauge cluster is always nice. I love the floating tack they have. Like this, it's so unfortunate that when this car came out, it kind of shot itself in the foot. But with the right aftermarket parts, you can definitely fix what they did. Well, thank you so much for bringing this up on this early Sunday morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach.
Don't sleep on the ISF if you are out there, because, man, what a good package and a good platform. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.